Hello and welcome to Carmichael Clan Radio, the official podcast of Clan Carmichael USA. Welcome back to episode 12 of Carmichael Clan Radio. I'm your host, Scott Carmichael. On today's show, I'm joined by John Carmichael of Lantana, Texas, known to most Clan Carmichael members simply as Lantana John. John has been a member of Clan Carmichael USA for nearly 30 years, and over that time he has been involved as a member of the board of directors, the newsletter editor, the committee chair for the Clan Carmichael products, and is considered by all to be the go-to Clan Carmichael USA genealogist. In this episode, John tells me about the unlikely way he discovered Clan Carmichael and about the surprise dinner guest that joined him for a meal during his first trip to Scotland. He tells me about what he found in the Dallas Public Library that sparked his love for genealogy and talks about how Clan Carmichael USA has evolved over the years and where he sees it going in the future. It was a real pleasure to get to spend some time with John and getting to hear about some of his favorite memories of Clan Carmichael over the years. These episodes of Carmichael Clan Radio, where I get to interview longtime members of Clan Carmichael, are actually the entire reason that I decided to start recording these shows in the first place. And I'm always grateful for the work that these members have put in over the years to establish and keep Clan Carmichael USA alive and thriving. It's a privilege to get to record your stories. As always, a few things before we begin. June is right around the corner, and if you're wanting to attend the Carmichael Gathering in Scotland, you're almost out of time. To learn more, or to reserve your spot, follow the link in the show notes below, or visit the Clan Carmichael International website at www.carmichael.co.uk. If you're interested in learning more about becoming a member of Clan Carmichael USA, visit the Clan Carmichael USA website at the link in the show notes, or visit www.clancarmichaelusa.com. And lastly, a huge thanks to Blair Carmichael for reaching out to me and offering to help with the sound engineering of Carmichael Clan Radio. This is the very kind of thing you'll hear John talk about in today's show, finding a place where you can put your skill set to work and stepping forward to help. Blair's willingness to use his skills to improve the overall quality of Carmichael Clan Radio is exactly the kind of thing that makes Clan Carmichael stand out above the rest. And now, let's talk to Lantana John Carmichael. John Carmichael, also known as Lantana John Carmichael, welcome to Carmichael Clan Radio. I really appreciate you joining me, and what most people won't know is that we had to overcome a few technical difficulties to get this show going, but we made it, and I'm excited to finally be able to sit down with you and talk. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So I was curious, how long have you been involved in Clan Carmichael and Clan Carmichael USA? And tell me the story about how you got involved. Are you one of the original members, or did you come along later? And
I came along a little later. I'm not an original member.
Okay.
No.
Well, how did you find out? What got you involved, and how did you find out about it?
Okay, there's a little bit of a story here, but I'll tell you. I grew up thinking I was Irish. I grew up, I was Irish. I never was interested in my genealogy, really, and my parents never talked about it much, but my mother told me that I was Irish. So I just accepted that, never thought of it. Well, in a way, probably the way that got started was I suspect my ancestor was Scottish, and when he emigrated, he may have emigrated from Ireland, I don't know, but
I've heard that, actually. I've heard from some other Carmichaels that, they were Scottish by way of Ireland. So
right.
That could be how that happened.
Right. Well, anyway, what happened was I got a letter in 1994 Now, bear in mind, I was 55 years old then. And this is how I learned I was Scottish. I got this letter. It was from a travel agency in Ohio. And the gist of the letter, I don't have it anymore, but the gist of the letter was, hey, you're a Carmichael, which means you're Scottish. And we are organizing a tour for Clan Carmichael people, to meet your clan chief and see the estate and all that. Oh, wow, that sounds really interesting. I didn't know I was Scottish. So I talked to my wife about it, and we decided we better go on this. Well, I'll sort of cut to the chase here now. When we arrived at the airport in Scotland,
Mm-hmm.
they had a piper waiting for us and all that, and that was all pretty exciting to us. But the bus, they put us on a tour bus. There were
Mm-hmm.
full bus, maybe 40 people, I don't know. But during this trip, which lasted a week, I got to talking to other people on the bus, and I realized they all got the same letter, but instead of Carmichael, they had their name.
Okay.
So that's when I realized, well, I got duped here a little bit. I thought this was exclusively for Carmichaels, but it's not. They probably all thought it was just for their clan. So what the tour guide did was every day they went to a different clan center. We're all invited, to go in and visit all of them if we wanted to. But if we weren't interested, we could skip the others and just visit ours. Well, it turns out the Carmichaels were going to be the last ones to visit their clan center. So we realized that kind of early on. And it was a real nice tour, really. I thought they did a good job on the tour. But the last evening before we left, we were going to go to Carmichael in the morning. They were having our farewell dinner that night. So they had a traditional Scottish dinner, They piped in a haggis and all that stuff. And I discovered when we got inside the dining area that our clan chief was there. And somehow he had gotten word about this. Some other Carmichael got a similar letter and told him about it, apparently. So he wasn't happy about that. He thought they're duping my people and I wasn't informed. And, he got a little uptight about it. But
yeah.
fine is we got to sit next to him and pick his brain all evening during this dinner. Boy, that was a terrific opportunity. So we learned quite a bit about how he got there from New Zealand and so forth. But so I didn't feel quite so bad about being duped at this point. And I won't spend any more time on the dinner. But the next morning, we all got up, got on the bus, and headed to Carmichael. We got there, and oh man, were me and my wife excited. I thought it was Irish, and here we are at the family estate. And the chief, he came out to greet us. Well, it was a farm, of course. For anybody who's been there, you know that. And we took the whole tour, and it was really, really interesting to me. I didn't know anything about how the clan got started. I didn't know anything about the Battle of Beaujeu or any of that. I didn't even know about Richard and how he got transferred from New Zealand to Scotland to take over as clan chief. Well, it was a very nice trip, and I was so pumped up. When we finished the tour that day, we got some sleep that night, got up early in the morning. Our hotel was at the airport, so we just waited to get taken to the terminal. And eventually we got on the airplane and flew home. Well, one thing Richard had told me during the dinner was he said, you need to get involved in Clan Carmichael USA. And I said, oh, I didn't know there was such a thing. He said, oh, yeah. He said, you need to talk to Alana Carmichael.
Right.
Well, it was Alana Nigro, actually. So that's what I did. Almost as soon as I got back, I called her. But we had a long conversation, and she was a little bit pumped up. They've been trying to build up their membership. And I got another call a day or two later from Cliff, who used to be our chaplain. So The more I talked to them, the more I realized I've got to learn more about my genealogy. So what I did, I kind of started researching genealogy in Dallas, and there is a Dallas Genealogical Society, and they have a class for beginners once a year, and it's held in the main downtown public library. And I also learned that library, it's an 8-story building, and the top floor of the 8th floor is all genealogy. They had a pretty good reputation. So to cut to the chase here, when the time came for this weekend orientation tour for beginning genealogists, I went to it. I think it was started Friday evening and went through Saturday, I believe. Well, the lady that taught it, she was a very good teacher, and she had a lot of material. And she said, well, I started out just like all you guys. I didn't know anything about my family genealogy. And now I've got this book I put together. And she held up this big book. And I thought, boy, that's terrific. That's what I'd like to do. So anyway, after the class ended, and she did take us up to the library at the very end and showed us how to use the card file system and all that, and give us a brief tour of the genealogy library. So after I got back home from that, I started going every weekend to the library, the genealogy library. And I was kind of on my own to a large degree, but she had given us a very quick intro to how to find certain things. So I just had to learn by trying. But one of the first things I discovered was there was a book. In Clan Carmichael USA, we used to sell those, and I guess we still have quite a few. It's called The Blue Book by Opal Carmichael Phoenix. It was her dad who was really the Carmichael, I guess. So I found that book at the genealogy library, and I looked in it, and lo and behold, it had my name in there.
Huh.
And what this lady did, Opal Phoenix Carmichael, or Carmichael Phoenix, what she did was she was a little old-fashioned. She didn't have a real serious computer setup, I'm sure, but she would use the telephone, and she, by word of mouth or whatever, she would get the names of people that she thought might know something about Carmichael. And so she would call them up, talk to them on the phone for a long time, take notes, and all the notes she took, she used to enter stuff in her book that she was putting together. Her dad had started it, but when he died, she took it over as a memorial to him.
Okay.
So she talked to the people and get any information she could. And then a lot of times she would arrange a follow-up visit to go visit them in case they had a cemetery site or something that they might want to visit. They could do that. She did it all manually. She didn't do searches online, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I doubt it went online. But
I was trying to think when that book was written. There's probably not even an internet when she wrote that, so she didn't have that.
May well be right, yeah.
Yeah. I was going to jump back, too, real quick. I was thinking, you really got started in Clan Carmichael, almost, drinking from the fire hose. Most people discover that they're Scottish and that they're a Carmichael, and that's a Scottish clan, and then they learn about it and eventually maybe make that trip to Scotland and go to the estate. But you really started at the top with, you discovering you're Scottish and then going straight to the top and meeting and Richard and getting to have dinner with him. Like, you really had a grand introduction to Clan Carmichael, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. But yeah, so tell me more about the genealogy, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, I started making the weekend trips to the library. I'd stay there several hours each time, and I would take a lot of notes. And shortly after I started that, I thought, I don't know how to organize this material. So I started researching online what tools might be available out there that I could use. And I ended up buying some software where you could record your own family history from your notes. And that's what I started doing. And this thing it made it much easier for the user because it was It was an app made by Microsoft called Front Page. You may have heard of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I started putting this book together, this story about. I put in all the names I could find from the library, all the Carmichael names, whatever I could find. When I came home with my notes, I would enter this new material, and it just slowly grew over the years. So now I've got a book. Nobody else can see it, but I'll show it to you. It's like a telephone book inside.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Got 17,500 names in here.
Huh. Yeah, for those who can't see it, that looks like a large city telephone book. Do you know how many pages are in that book? Do you know?
Well,
It looks to me around like 400 or so.
Yeah, let's see. More like 1,000.
Oh, okay. Goodness. And so that's the book that you compiled since you started doing the genealogical research?
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow. I didn't realize. I knew that you were considered the resident genealogist of Clan Carmichael USA. I think you and I have had some emails, and when people email me, as the membership coordinator, I get a lot of emails of people asking about, they'll reach out and say, I'm trying to find something about, so-and-so. And so I knew that, you were the, kind of the official genealogist of Clan Carmichael USA. I didn't realize, though, the extent to which that was the case. That's quite a large book you've compiled there. Do you have any plans on, or actually I should say, what are your plans for the book? You ever thought about having it published or reproduced in any way?
I primarily created that book for my two daughters. I was so excited to find out I was Scottish. I thought they would get very excited too. And they got a little bit excited, but not quite as much as me. In 2000, we took our first tour of Scotland, I think, or our second tour really, of Scotland in 1996, I believe. And then we've gone there a total of 6 times now over the years. The last time was 2014.
Were those trips to the Carmichael gatherings, or were those trips that were organized on your own?
Well, the way Richard organized those trips, it started off with a week at the gathering.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who chose to pay extra and go on the tour, he would lead a Highland tour usually. So I could do both.
Okay. So you said 2014 was the last time you were there, correct?
That was my last time, yeah.
Okay.
I'm a little older now than I used to be, and don't travel much anymore. So I kind of quit going to that, especially since COVID.
Sure, yeah.
Shut down for a while, and I've just never gotten back in the groove of going to Scotland every time.
Right. What do you remember from the 6 trips? What are some of your best memories in Scotland from all the times you were there? Do you have any particular memories that stick out?
Well, every trip was like a new trip to me. One thing I liked was Richard will lead walking tours through his estate, and he'll come to different areas where there's a monument or a ruins or a church or something, and he'll tell us what happened there. So I learned some of the details that I wasn't really aware of from those tours on the estate. Like, for instance, I didn't know that there was some old ruins, old British ruins that probably went back towards the time of the Romans.
Huh. I didn't know that either.
Yeah, it's on a hill across the highway from the estate.
Okay.
One thing I remember. We also hiked up another big hill on the property to see the Hindford Monument, which you may have heard of. That, I don't think that was put up by the great Earl himself, the Earl of Hindford, but I think maybe some of the CCUSA people might have helped get that going.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was put up later.
Yeah.
And it's on top of Carmichael Hill. I think that's right, isn't it?
I think you're right. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Huh. I know there's the mausoleum, there's the Hindford Monument,
Mm-hmm.
There's the Carmichael House, the East End House. Any particular monument or site that sticks out to you that if you were to go back to Scotland now, like what would be the one you would definitely want to see first or go back to if you had to choose one?
Well, I think the thing that comes to mind to me right now is I have not seen the rebuilt tower there, which was the center part of the estate. Clan Carmichael USA funded that and took materials and tools with them and did that. And in fact, I think it was a young man who had married Alana's daughter who kind of spearheaded that because he had an engineering degree and knew a little bit about construction.
Okay.
I'd like to see that. They put a roof on it, basically, that was the big deal because the roofs were gone or leaking badly.
Yeah, Alana told me about that. I saw some pictures of when they were all at the house,
right
inside, kind of up inside the tower, doing some work to repair it, and it did look really neat. I would like to see that also. I've not been to Scotland yet, and so I've always wanted to see the Carmichael house. That was, I think, for me, one of the first things that I encountered as someone learning about Clan Carmichael was this. I remember referring to it at the time as the Carmichael Castle, and,
right.
and I was like, oh, wow, we have a castle in Scotland, and so I've always wanted to see that. But that would be neat. I think that is interesting that you haven't seen that yet, the tower that's been reconstructed. Did you see the house before they got over to do the reconstruction on the roof?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Every trip.
Okay. That's neat. So you got, like I said earlier, you kind of went to the top and you started your Clan Carmichael experience in Scotland at the estate, which is an amazing way to get started. In between the trips to Scotland, did you get involved in, the Highland Games and setting up tents and all these things locally?
Oh, yeah.
You did some of that too?
I had thought about it, and I did go to a Scottish festival. We have a big one here in Dallas every year in the spring. But I was a little afraid to take it on. I didn't understand what was involved. So I don't know. I talked to several of the members of CCUSA who had been around a long time, like Alana, Cliff, and et cetera. And they all reassured me this, it's a piece of cake. So you don't really need to be trained. You just need to go do it. And it'll be easy. You'll find out it's a lot of fun. So I got screwed up enough courage to do that. And it did go pretty well. I mean, there were things I realized I wanted to change a little bit for the next time, but I started doing that every year. And I did clan tents like that for, I don't know how long really, but at least 15 years probably.
Okay.
Every year. And I met a lot of people from other clans at those. And that was how we really met people from other Scottish clans in those days, was through the games. And I would highly recommend to any new members in CCUSA that if you have a Scottish festival within driving distance of where you live, I highly recommend that you go to it. You'll have a ball. I mean, it's really fun.
I agree with that. But I've only been to one Highland Games so far, and that was the Stone Mountain Highland Games last October.
Right.
And I didn't host the tent, but I was kind of reluctant to go. I think I may have told this story at some point. I kind of had this idea that Highland Games may be like Renaissance fairs, with more of like a medieval type thing. And I guess you get some of that at times, but finally I went to the Stone Mountain Games and I totally agree with you. I found it to be a lot of fun.
Right.
And it wasn't what I thought it was going to be either. But it was
Right.
one of those things where you kind of have to show up to understand and to really get it about these Highland Games things, because they are a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
Were you always, you said you did this for about 15 years, these tents. Was that at the Dallas Festival, or is there a particular Highland Games that you attended mostly?
Well, it started out being the Dallas Festival, yes, because that's the biggest one we have in our area around.
Okay.
But after a little while, I learned about other smaller Scottish festivals or Irish festivals that were held in other places around Dallas. And so I started doing tents at some of those too.
Is there a any difference between the two? Anything other than the scale, or is there a different feel to the smaller ones?
Yeah, they do. It's hard to pin it down what it is exactly, but sometimes when I would go to these smaller festivals, after it was over, I would come home and tell my wife that, I enjoyed this maybe a little more than I do the Dallas one, which is so big.
Well, that's kind of what I was wondering, if it was more relaxed, maybe, or maybe just a slower pace or something like
Mhm.
that. So maybe that is what the smaller ones offer.
Right.
So you mentioned that your daughters at first weren't really quite as into Clan Carmichael as you. Have they come around? Are they excited about it yet? I've got two kids. One is 10, one is 13, and neither of them are really excited about it.
Yeah.
Although my daughter does, she is a faithful listener to the podcast. But like, did your daughters ever kind of get the bug and get more into it? Or are they still on the fence?
They're still kind of on the fence.
Yeah.
I've got a story about that.
Okay.
Uh, in 2000, Richard had a special gathering and tour that was to celebrate the Battle of Beaujeu.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone who's listening to this may not know what that was, but it was a big battle. The English had gone to France. Their goal was to defeat France. And they had a long war that went on for many years. And the French and the Scots had one thing in common. They both hated the English. They had both fought with England many times. And so they formed an alliance between those two countries. And basically what it amounted to was, if the English attacked Scotland, the French were duty bound to come join the Scots, and vice versa. If it was the Scots, or if it was the French being invaded, then the Scots would go to France and support them. Well, that's what happened. And the event I'm about to tell you about happened, I think, in 1421, the Battle of Beaujeu. And at that time, France was in great danger of falling to the English. Things were not looking good for France. Well, Sir John Carmichael, who didn't have the title back then, in fact, the Clan Carmichael really didn't exist formally as an official recognized clan. What they did was they had sent some knights over there, a small army to work with the French, to fight with them. And Sir John Carmichael was one of the knights. He had the armor and the whole outfit, which was kind of unusual because that was expensive back then. But they had enough money they could finance it, I guess. So anyway, it just so happened that this one day in the little village of Beaujeu, which we visited in 2000, our daughters got to see it. That's where the Scots were, and they realized that the English, the enemy, were just up ahead by these churches. It's kind of the center of this little tiny town. So Scots decided, well, by golly, we're going to go up there and attack them. That's we can do it. So that's what they did. And they met at a bridge. Scots were coming down a hill towards the little stream that ran through there under the bridge. And the English were on the other side. Well, the English got wind that they were coming. So when the two sides could see each other, Clarence was the king of England's brother.
Right.
King of England's brother, Clarence. He was in charge of the English troops. And when they spotted the Scots coming on horseback, one man that was with the English army, I guess it was the king's brother, Clarence. That's who it was. Yeah.
I think it's so it's Henry V's brother who was the king at the time, and it's his Thomas Plantagenet is the Duke of Clarence, is who you're referring to.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I have to search to remember some of this now. But anyway, he decided that he was going to go out and take this would-be Scottish knight, down by himself. So he did. He went charging out with his lance raised, and Sir John Carmichael did the same thing. They were both a little stubborn, I guess. And as they approached each other, Carmichael was the victor. He knocked Clarence from his horse. He unhorsed him.
Mm-hmm.
And he was still alive, but he was on the ground and in bad shape. Well, all the other sons behind Sir John Carmichael, they came up and finished him off. They killed him. So that's how Clan Carmichael came to be recognized. That's how they got their coat of arms and all the rest of it. They were big heroes at that point. So anyway, that's the story of the Battle of Beaujeu.
So your daughters went with you in 2000 for that tour and still weren't captivated.
Yeah, I bought both of them a lady's kilt.
Okay.
Plaid. I had it made in a place in Kansas City, and they had that. And I bought some other clothing for them too. I wanted them to really look good, and get excited. Well, at Beaujeu, when we arrived there, the local villagers in that little village knew we were coming, of course. They had been planning it with Richard. And they made a nice meal for us, sort of a homemade meal. But we came marching up with Richard in the front to the place where we were going to have lunch and to meet everybody. And it was very elegant. So our girls probably got more excited at that point than they had been any time before or since. But it did get them keyed up a little bit. So anyway, when we came home, they kind of dropped out. They would come to the game sometimes if I was doing a tent, but not every time. They both got married. In fact, our firstborn, Katie, her husband went with us too.
Okay.
It was between marriages at that point, so she was alone. Yeah.
Well, maybe there's hope in the future that they'll get the bug. When
Right.
I was talking with Andrew Carmichael
Mm-hmm.
in one of the episodes, he mentioned, or no, I take that back. It wasn't Andrew. It was with Rocky Rager from USA Kilts. He mentioned that,
Oh, yeah.
a lot of people get involved in their Scottish heritage at an older age. There aren't many young people that really get the genealogical bug or this desire to find out more about their heritage, that it happens a lot of times at an older age. And he mentioned even when people's parents pass away, they start looking into their past or whatnot. So hopefully your daughters will get involved before then, since they have the best source in Clan Carmichael USA sitting here, and it would be a real advantage for them to get involved sooner rather than later. So hopefully they'll do that one day. Hopefully they'll come back around, especially since they already have kilts made. That's handy.
Well, my older daughter, she's a little more into it than the younger one. Older daughter's got 3 sons.
Okay.
They're all college age now, except for one that's a senior. He'll be a senior this year in high school. But the other daughter, she has mostly girls. 1 son, but 3 girls. I made a copy of this book for each of them, and I gave them a little, I put it in a little plastic box made to carry files or papers. That book will be a great start for anybody who wants to research Carmichael.
Yeah, it will. So I asked Adele this too, and I'm curious to see what you'd have to say. So you've been a member of the board of directors at Clan Carmichael USA for several years.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I've seen that we run into sometimes is when we do find younger members is that they want to get involved, but there's not an available, role immediately available to play, they don't have a place to just jump in and get started,
Yeah.
Which, these things are already done. There's already someone on the board. There's already someone doing these things. What advice would you have as someone who's been involved in Clan Carmichael for 30 years? Yeah, 30 years.
Approximately.
What would be your advice to a new member or someone just now discovering Clan Carmichael about how to get involved? What would your advice be for them?
Well, when I first started out, I was very excited about being part of CCUSA. I didn't know that existed. But over the years, what happens at these Scottish festivals has changed quite a bit. And all of the clans in recent years have struggled to raise enough money to stay alive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a problem. back when I started out, the big deal was if you were going to be active in the Klan, you had to host a Klan tent at one of the festivals. You had to meet a lot of Carmichaels there, follow up, send them a letter and thank them for coming and ask them to join CC USA. I would do that at the tent too. That still works. I still would recommend to any new member that they go to a Scottish festival and get involved. And don't wait for some senior member of the Klan to call you up and say, "Oh, I know the perfect job for you. You need to ask to do such and such. Here's a job you could do." That won't happen. You have to take the initiative as a new member to find things to do. And if you do, you will get noticed. And if you keep it up long enough, you'll even get on the board like I did. So that's the first thing I would tell them.
Yeah, I do think that's good advice. And that, the senior members don't always know the strengths of new members. And so for someone who might be listening, thinking about getting more involved, I guess, kind of like what you said, is find out where you'll be an asset and get involved there. If you're a writer, maybe get involved with the newsletter. I know Leah always needs help, with contributors to articles and whatnot. So maybe find your strength and see where you can be help.
Yeah, I can appreciate that because I did the newsletter at one time. In fact, when it started out, the Don Carmichael was involved with it, and Alana's father was involved with it earlier. But they did it manually. I'm not quite sure how they did it, to be honest. But it was more like, you type something up and you paste figures and you take it to a printer, really old fashioned. So I found out about this software that Microsoft had called Front Page, and it was designed for tasks like this. So it wasn't hard to learn how to use it. And for several years, I put out a digital newsletter with that. So, but it's grown a lot since then. It's different apps now and different ways of doing it. But the point is, it needed to be digital.
Yeah. Were you the first one to do the digital?
Yes.
Okay. That's pretty groundbreaking. I think that's a real advance.
I learned as I went.
Well, I think maybe that's what a lot of us do. That's what I do with this podcast. I'm just trying to kind of figure it out as I go. Right. Maybe that's a Carmichael characteristic.
Well, the word I've heard used at home to describe the Carmichaels is stubborn and persistent.
I think that sounds right. I think that's pretty accurate. Oh, me. Well, so how long did you? So you did the newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
You do genealogy. You're on the board. Are there any other roles that you've played at Carmichael, at Clan Carmichael USA over the years?
Oh yeah, I've had a number of jobs over the years. One time I had Adele's job. I was in charge of the Clan goods because in the early days, not only did we encourage people to go host a tent, but, we also made arrangements to ship them a box of Clan goods to try to sell as a fundraiser at their tent. We don't do that hardly at all anymore. I'm not sure that even exists, but
I think they have some Clan goods that are hanging around somewhere.
Right.
Kind of the outlier goods, the XXL shirts, and the things that didn't sell.
Right.
Which is sort of the disadvantage of having the goods shipped around as you're paying shipping and also dealing with inventory and things like that.
Oh, it's a big deal. And we would lose money on that many times because things would be damaged or lost in transit. It had to be shipped to the game and then shipped back to whoever was in charge at that time. And Bill, I recruited her to do that. And bless her heart, she is very willing to help any way she can. She did. I was very happy to meet her.
That's a very good word to describe Adele, as a very willing participant in Clan Carmichael. I mean, she was almost doing everything when I came into Clan Carmichael. She was doing goods,
She was.
newsletter, membership, secretary. She had a whole host of things that she was trying to juggle. So she definitely is willing and persistent.
Mm-hmm. Later on, after I had joined the clan and got more involved, I think I really found my calling was recruiting people to do things like that.
Okay.
I did recruit quite a few people that either were or maybe in some cases still are helping the clan any way they can. So that's what I was trying to apply earlier to the new members is, go to the games and all that, host tents, but be aware that we're always able to grow more if we can recruit people and encourage them to find a job to do. But they really have to find it on their own, I would say.
Yeah. I have a two-part question for you here. How has Clan Carmichael changed since you've been involved? And what do you think the future holds for Clan Carmichael USA? What would you like to see happen at Clan Carmichael USA in the future?
Yeah, it's changed greatly. When I first joined, we had a small, tight-knit group of directors and people that were doing these jobs. It was spread out a whole lot. And we certainly did not have the organization we have today. We had a charter or bylaws, but that was just more about the governance of Clan Carmichael and how we had to stay on the right side of the IRS.
Yeah.
We do have requirements of how we do things with the money. We're supposed to be nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest change, I think, is now we're totally dependent on the internet. That's where our growth is happening, and that's where it's at now.
Yeah.
That don't figure out how to do that are not going to make it. I've seen a lot of clan groups disappear over the years.
That's a good point. That maybe when you got involved and over the years, Clan Carmichael's presence and any clan's presence was the Highland Games, the tents,
right?
And now the presence is an online presence. They are at the games, but if you don't figure out how to have that online presence, you kind of go away. And I think that online presence is great too because it's so much more accessible to everybody. You can find Clan Carmichael if you're in Seattle, Washington, or Miami, Florida. Like it's all you can access it just as easily. That is an interesting point that presence has shifted toward an online presence now.
Well, you're a great example of that. This podcast, this radio show that you
yeah
you had some skill at that, and you saw that could be useful, and you jumped right in all by yourself. That's the kind of people we need to get, is people like you will do that.
Well, I appreciate that. I should say I actually had no skill in this at all. I was figuring it out as I went. The characteristic I had was the persistence. I was always a podcast listener, and I thought I'd like to know how those are made.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of tinkered with it and figured it out, and we have what we have here, which I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
So what would you like to see in the future for Clan Carmichael USA? We're online now. Is there any kind of vision or direction that you would like to see Clan Carmichael USA go?
Well, it's hard for me to see the future, and especially since Andrew is going to be taking over, and Richard's doing less and less, and Andrew's going to be doing more and more. So it's always evolving, and it will continue to do that, not just from our end at CCUSA, but also from Richard and Andrew's end.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point too.
Yeah, and I like the way our new young board members like yourself are accommodating Andrew and talking to him a lot and trying to get to know each other better and, discussing things that maybe we could try to see if we could improve the organization.
Yeah, we definitely are, attempting to kind of bridge that divide. 30 years ago, it was probably a lot more difficult to do things in conjunction since it was, like you said a minute ago, that we had different presences. We were online, they were running the estate, or we were at the games and they were running the estate. it is an ever evolving organization that I hope those two entities will come closer over the years, and that since we both have an online presence now, of course they have their presence at the estate too, where they're running the estate and making ends meet there. But it seems that with everything moving online, that my hope is that we can work more closely together in the future. And so,
right.
So I agree with you on that's something I hope that happens.
Yeah,
and it is an ever evolving process for sure.
Maybe this would encourage some young people to join CCUSA. I told you how I got started early with the clan with CCUSA through Alana and Cliff and Don and all these old timers. But we got too old as a group of leaders. Our leadership it's the same people that had started the clan.
Yeah.
The Carmichael USA. We got too old and too set in our ways, and it was just withering. It was dying on the vine. And the thing that has really saved us is young guys like you, guys and girls, that have joined the clan in recent years and have just absolutely jumped in and taken over things like the newsletter and whatever, you name it. And this radio podcast, this is a great idea. These things are really, that needs to be our future, to get more young people involved in the leadership.
Yeah.
Not just members, but, in the leadership. And that's why we have promoted a lot of you guys, tried to keep you active.
Well, I appreciate that. It's been something I've been really passionate about since I was in college. I mentioned once that it's kind of ebbed and flowed over the years. I've had times where I've was much more into it, and finally, when I got to be, actually, I guess it was around the pandemic, and where Don was reaching out for new, for help for Adele to relieve some of Adele's duties. I was lucky enough to get involved, and it's been something that I've really enjoyed doing.
Good.
For anyone listening to the show who's thinking about getting involved, obviously I'm the membership coordinator, so I'd love to see people get involved. But I think it's a real rewarding thing, more so than I even anticipated getting involved. It's been something that I really am passionate about and enjoy doing. So I always say in every introduction to these podcasts, as we grow and do more in the future, and I believe that. I think we will grow, and I think we'll do more as we move into the future. So
I do have one story I would like to tell.
Go ahead. Yeah.
It has to do with an event that occurred in CCUSA, not in Scotland, but in this country. You probably met Art Carmichael from California. Okay. He, in the past, would occasionally have a Carmichael gathering, USA Carmichael gathering. I went to several of those, 2 or 3 in California. He had one that was very interesting. It was a year that we were going to have our annual meeting, and we normally have that in maybe Atlanta, at the Stone Mountain Games, or one of our standard places.
Right.
But Richard was going to come and attend our annual meeting. And so Art took the lead on that. He got this idea. He hosted the clan tent in California at the Pleasanton Games, which is the biggest Scottish games. And he put up a big, huge double tent. I mean, he did it first class. And it was going to involve a ski trip afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was afterwards. Might have been before. But anyway, what happened was he has a lodge on Lake Tahoe. It's beautiful. It's really, really nice. He and his cousin Billy, we call him.
Okay.
Put that together somehow. But he said, we'll have our annual meeting there with the chief, and we'll have a little scotch and hors d'oeuvres, and it'll be fun. And then we got the ski trip after that. Well, Margot and I went out there. We flew into the airport and rented a car, and I didn't really know the best way to drive, but I took what was not the best way. I went over the mountains.
Okay.
And it turns out they had mother of all snowstorms that year. This was in 2011. Just to tell you how much snow fell, when we got to the lodge, we were driving around or trying to. You know how you can go into any town in the country, and when you see a street sign, and they got the signs on top that, facing in 2 directions or 4 directions.
Sure.
The snow was all the way up to those name signs for the streets.
Wow.
Snow fell. And so hardly anybody just wanted to go skiing. In fact, they didn't even have skiing first. But after a couple of days, I think they did open the ski lodge up. You had to really be a serious ski aficionado to want to go. So Richard went, and a few of our members went, but most of us sat it out. We stayed home.
Yeah, I've heard Richard is a real skier.
Yeah, he's very good. I've never seen him ski, but I know he skis regularly.
Yeah.
That was quite a trip. Boy, we got a lot of stories to tell when we got home.
I bet. I need to get in touch with Art and see if he can organize another Lake Tahoe meeting. I might like to attend that. That's funny. Well, John, I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me and honestly, all the effort that you went through to get online with me and work through our technical issues we ran into earlier in the week, and it really means a lot. And I think everyone is going to really enjoy hearing from you when this episode comes out. So thanks so much for taking the time to meet with me and talk with me and share some of these memories that you have of Clan Carmichael over the years. It's been a lot of fun.
It's been a privilege and a pleasure.
Once again, a big thank you to John Carmichael for joining me on today's show. Like I said earlier, I love getting to record the stories and memories of Clan Carmichael over the years, and I'm honored that each of my guests trusts me to bring their stories to you. As always, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast and to share it with anyone else that you think might enjoy the show. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or subscribe to the Clan Carmichael USA Substack page at clancarmichael.substack.com. By subscribing to the Substack page, each time I release a new episode or essay, it'll land right in your inbox. So be sure to get signed up to receive all the latest from Clan Carmichael. And finally, if you like what we're doing, please leave a 5-star rating, a positive review, or leave some feedback in the comments section. Your reviews help to promote the show and make it easier for others to find us, and it lets me know that you're enjoying the show. So until next time, toujours prêt. See you soon.